Honestly, at this point, Governor Sarah Just Call Me Victim Palin should be on tour, or at least on with Dr. Phil. This interview is with Esquire magazine, and on our #1 story, she hits her usual targets, bloggers and people who think you can't see Russia from Alaska. But this time she also attacks, with a stunning lack of moderation, the McCain campaign, with absolutely no sense that she is nourishing that caricature of herself that the rest of us can only throw crumbs at, quoting, "You have to let it go. Even hard news sources, credible news sources, the comment about you can see Russia from Alaska, you can. You can see Russia from Alaska." Something like that, a factual statement that was taken out of context and mocked. What you have to do is let that go. No sense of irony that this was only taken in the first place because she actually cited it as evidence of her own foreign policy credentials. Nobody's doubting that you can see Russia from Alaska. They're only doubting the brain power of anybody who thinks this has anything to do with international knowledge. On the McCain campaign, quoting, "If I were given advice to myself back on the day my candidacy was announced, I'd say, tell the campaign that you'll be calling some of the shots. Don't just assume that they know you well enough to make all your decisions for you." Governor Palin also again rails against not only bored, anonymous, pathetic bloggers who lie to annoy me, but also the Anchorage Daily News for continuing to pursue rumors in an effort to knock them down, in fact, about her son Trigg's maternity. Apropos of this, also in Esquire magazine, interviewers of Governor Palin defended by an unlikely source, "I did not think that either the Charlie Gibson interview or the Katie Couric interviews were unfair. In fact, if anything, Katie Couric was extraordinarily gentle, even helpful." So says former Republican presidential candidate, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. Let's turn now to Washington Post columnist and associate editor and MSNBC political analyst Eugene Robinson. Good evening, Gene.
Evening, Keith.
Well, let's start with the jab at the McCain campaign. What happened to all those denials pre- and post-election that there was any friction between the governor and the McCain people?
Well, that's what happens. Presidential candidates and vice presidential candidates who lose, there's always friction between those two camps. You should see the impressions of John Kerry that the Edwards people do and the impressions of Edwards that the Kerry people do. But this time it's kind of weird. It kind of illustrates the real mismatch between John McCain and Sarah Palin. What an odd pairing this was. Clearly, reports of no friction were just a load of baloney.
Is there a way from this interview or any of the other ones to tell whether the governor thinks that if they had left her alone, as she describes it, she thinks she would have gotten McCain more votes or fewer votes, or is she now seeing this exclusively through the prism of whatever her own plans are for 2012?
I think there was a moment during the campaign when she genuinely thought that if they just left her alone, she would get more votes and she might yet pull this out of the fire for them. I think that moment lasted maybe a few days and was over long before the voting. I think from that point on, it really became about Sarah Palin and about her future. She had captivated a following nationwide, and she wanted to figure out how to sustain that and how to capitalize on it and where it could take her. And I think she's still trying to figure that out.
Throughout all of these interviews, the one with the right-wing guy last week and this in Esquire, is this superb sense of victimhood. And there, she was defeated by bloggers. She was defeated by Katie Couric. She was defeated by the media. There's two parts of that. What happened to the Republican credo, the Sarah Palin Wild West credo of personal responsibility? And also, how could she lose to bloggers?
Really? I mean, if the blogger is saying nasty things about you qualifies you as a victim, then sign me up for Victim Hall of Fame, and I'm sure you're there too.
Oh, yes.
That really doesn't get it these days. That really strikes the false note in the kind of Sarah Palin persona that she tried so hard to project at first. The lipstick on a pit bull, kind of moose shooting and field dressing mama from Alaska who could, tossed through elbows with the guys and didn't take any stuff from nobody. And all of a sudden she's saying, "Oh, woe is me. They were beastly to me." It doesn't seem. I was going to say it doesn't seem genuine, but it doesn't seem genuine if you grant the point that the image she was initially trying to project was indeed genuine.
About the blogs and her son, the Anchorage Daily News was apparently asking around in hopes of finally putting the lie to that story, whereupon the governor's office emailed the editor demanding to know why the paper was still asking these questions, and the governor has now twice in the last week reintroduced her son and blogs into interviews. At what point does the responsibility for perpetuating the story, indeed for using the governor's own son, at what point does that responsibility shift from bloggers to governors?
I really think it shifted back in August, to tell you the truth, because no responsible, serious, semi-responsible, semi-credible news organizations have pursued the story since it was demonstrated to be not a story. So, again, it's part of what we were talking about a minute ago, this I am a victim kind of storyline that she seems determined to weave into the rich Sarah Palin tapestry that we were following and wondering where it's going to lead. It doesn't strike me as the way she wants to go, but she wants to continue to play it this way. So I guess we'll be hearing about this for the next at least 3.5 years.
Boy, I hope so. And by the way, that rich tapestry you described, you can see that from Kiev. When she holds it up, you can see it right across the Bering Strait. Gene Robinson of the Washington Post and MSNBC. Great thanks, as always. Great column today.